Lady Democrat.
We are live with Mesquite today and with Dr. Vern Kilborn today. Dr. Vern is a retired um, chiropractor, sorry, lost myself there for a minute, retired chiropractor. And I will let Dr. Vern tell you a little bit about why he is a retired chiropractor who has, by the way, kept up all of his medical knowledge, licensure, and all that over the 40 years that he has been retired. So welcome, Dr. Vern. One of my favorite people, too.
Well,
Hi, Doc.
Thank you, Terry. It's good to be with you, Terry, and with all the folks that are listening now and maybe listening at a later date. But I've been in practice. I've had my license since 1961. I was licensed in the state of Utah and was in practice for 17 years. I was running two chiropractic offices. I had one in Morgan, Utah, and a practice in Roy, Utah. Then once a month, I had a fly-in practice out at Dutch John, Utah, Flaming Gorge. When I could fly out, I would fly, and in the wintertime, when it was not possible to fly out there, then I would drive out. But after 9 years of college, getting my degree, I got flying hang gliders as a pastime and crashed a hang glider at the point of the mountain in just out of Salt Lake City. Fractured 2 cervical vertebrae and a right arm, collarbone, and several ribs. Became a quadriplegic. There was a period of time there they did not know if I was going to live or not. But all that aside, I was in traction for 8 weeks. I chose to have traction rather than intervening surgery, which I really feel was to my advantage and why I'm able to function the way I am today. But it's very discouraging and depressing when in a matter of minutes you wipe out 17 years of hard work establishing a practice, 9 years of college, some of it postgraduate work. I took a course in orthopedics because there are some things that we were able to do as chiropractors, but we need the training. And I don't know if I need to get into this type of discussion at all, but I will briefly. At the time that I was in practice in the 60s and 70s, medical doctors and chiropractors were not allowed to even socialize together, let alone work together as a profession. And right to this day, a lot of people do not believe that that was the situation. But during those years, it was necessary for a medical practitioner to belong to the AMA. If they did not belong, then they were denied hospital privileges and access to pharmaceutical companies. And so they virtually had to belong to the AMA and be a member in good standing. And at that time, I'm paraphrasing the application, but it says in part that to maintain membership in the AMA, that the physician could not align himself professionally or socially with any person, group, or organization that was not recognized by the AMA. And at that time, there was a worldwide distribution of trying to destroy the chiropractic profession. So they were calling chiropractors charlatans, they were calling quacks, we were labeled as cultists. And so it was certainly known that the AMA did not recognize or approve of the chiropractic profession. So it took 5 chiropractors out of Chicago that initiated a lawsuit against the AMA, and it was in litigation for 15 years. And it finally went to the United States Supreme Court, and the United States Supreme Court ruled in favor of the chiropractic profession. Now, if anyone questions that part of what I'm saying, the records are there. I didn't just dream this up to present this to this podcast. But fortunately, because of that lawsuit, we are now able to at least speak to the medical practitioners, and many of them are working together. There's somewhat humor in this thing now, but anyway, in all those years, I had to give up my practice as an active chiropractor. I, however, have maintained my license in the state of Utah for the last 44 years. And I love to study now. I didn't have time to really study in college, study to learn. I realized that I was studying to pass examinations. And you don't get a good knowledge base doing that. So I'm trying to fill in for 44 years now. So that's why I keep my license active, but I am not practicing.
I want to ask you to clarify something. You said that you studied for 40 years to pass examinations, but that was not sufficient.
No, when you study just to be able to pass the required tests, at that time, then you had what they called the basic science exam. All of the states, most of them had a basic science exam that all healthcare practitioners had to pass. And most people don't realize this, but that exam covered all of the subjects that were required in all of the colleges. You had to go through all of the basic science courses: anatomy, physiology, chemistry, bacteriology, hygiene,
immunology.
Yes, the whole gamut. And so we had to, all practitioners had to sit down side by side in the same room and take this examination. Well, your examination in all of these classes in the various colleges, of course, you had to pass those tests at the completion of study in those different subjects. And so when you just study to be able to pass an examination, you don't get a basic background of the knowledge that you should have.
So you don't get the nuts and bolts, you just get the surface, the shiny parts.
And I really am sorry about that, but I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I used my GI Bill from being in the Army during the Korean conflict. It wasn't a war. By the way, that war isn't over yet.
Thank you for your service, by the way.
Well, thank you. I served part of the time in Vietnam also. I'm a Vietnam veteran, but I did not see combat in Vietnam, but I was in the Navy Reserve during that time, served on the aircraft carrier, the Ranger.
So we'll have Dr. Vern on another time, because he met a gentleman who also served on aircraft carriers. And we did a story. If you want to look on YouTube, Mesquite Today page, there is an interview with Dr. Vern and the gentleman that he brought about, talking about a ghost ship. It was the most phenomenal occurrence, I guess you could say, about landing a plane on an aircraft carrier. I'm not going to even give away the crux of it, but it's a pretty fascinating story, and we'll probably talk about that on a later show. But I want to get into right now is some of the things that Dr. Vern really studies, and that is natural versus chemical, holistic versus, running for all of these medical procedures and things like that. Basically, the interactions between the brain and your gut health, and how keeping yourself viable and immune or protected against is always better than catching the disease and treating it. Is that correct? Sort of, you want to prevent rather than catch and treat.
Yes, and I know this is very controversial, but most of our health care in this day and age is trying to find the cure for something rather than the prevention. And we've been told for all of these years that coming in contact with bacteria and viruses and things, that you're going to suffer the consequences of that and you're going to die. Well, if the theory of bacterial contamination or viral contamination, if that is true in its concept, then none of us would even be alive. This conversation wouldn't even be taking place now, because we would have never survived this time. And I guess this is going to be controversial too, but we were given these bodies by God, and whether you believe in God or not, that's up to you. But I do, and I believe that God gave us this body, and He gave us all of the essentials that we needed to keep it healthy. But we certainly can't do it in today's environment, because we have too much processed food. We have been overactive in cultivation and adding too many artificial chemicals to the soil, and in many areas the things that we need, the minerals that we need to keep our bodies healthy, is absent from the soil to start with. So some of these things need to be supplemented, because we're not really getting those essential materials from the diet and from the lifestyle that we live.
And then cooking processes. Heating food reduces the amount of vitamins and minerals in the food. Microwaving it absolutely kills any essential vitamins or nutrients that are in your food. So you're basically eating zero. It's just a filler, kind of an inert ingredient at that point. But I even had read a study that green beans and apples, even buying organic versions of those, contain the highest amount of arsenic, simply because there's so much arsenic in our ground that the roots of the vegetable or the trees and everything absorb that, and that goes into the vegetables and the plants themselves, and then onto us. So a lot of the chemicals and everything kill the absorption of those plants and those minerals in our body. But when we take supplements, they don't exactly tell us how to take those supplements properly to where we even absorb half the supplements. I know some calcium pills, for instance, go right through people. And why is that?
Oh, that's one of my favorite subjects, is calcium utilization. Every cell in your body requires calcium to function. And when you talk to people about calcium, and I do this several times a week, we get talking about diet. So I said, what's calcium good for in the body? Oh, bones and teeth. Well, really? How about your cell level? How about your heartbeat? What's that got to do? Well, I don't know. Well, calcium's what makes your heart beat. And your heart contracts because of an electrical current. I have to chuckle because we are such a complex mechanism, and we can mess around with the computer day in and day out, and yet you yourself have got several walking computers inside your body that you don't even think about. You eat a big beefsteak and go to bed and forget all about it. Well, the chemistry that beefsteak goes through in your body before you can utilize it cannot be duplicated in any lab in this world. And yet we take all these things for granted. But calcium is more important for the nervous system than anything else in the body. Your body will rob your bones and teeth of calcium in order to keep you alive. So back to the importance of calcium. Right after I got my first x-ray, now this was in 1962. I bought my own x-ray machine because people just didn't join together and go in together as a complex and have one x-ray unit and 5 or 6 doctors use that same unit. Each one of us had our own. Well, we had the x-ray film that we had to take, and then you took the film and you took it in the dark room and put it in the developer, timed it, and you looked at it through the dark light every once in a while. Then you put it into the fixer and it sit there for a while. Then you put it in the neutralizer tank to let everything set. So about 2 hours later, then you could finally really take a good detailed view of the x-ray. Well, I x-rayed this lady, and when I had the film in the dark room, just looking at the contrast, I could see all of these lumps around in the intestinal tract. And I thought, oh, looks like we have some metastatic cancer here. I ahead and developed the x-rays, got them out so I could look them on the view box. And I started studying each one of those spots. There were 14 of them. Even got out my magnifying glass and got up close so that I could take a picture or really look at the size and shape. The first thing I noticed is every one of them, if it was at the right angle, was the same shape and the same size. Aha, question, red flag. So before I went out and talked to the lady about it, I asked her, are you taking some kind of a supplement? Well, yes, I have my own health food store and I take calcium tablets every day. I said, how many? Well, I take 4 every day. And I said, well, we have a little problem here. One of them is you're apparently constipated because counting the tablets that are in your intestinal tract, there are 14 of them. And so that's more than a 3-day supply. Well, you should have gone to the bathroom before 3 days. So that's the problem on itself. And then the other thing is you're not getting any benefit out of the calcium tablets that you're taking because they're not dissolved and they certainly cannot be absorbed on that side through the intestinal wall. So you could have saved your time by flushing them down the toilet in the first place.
Excuse me 1 minute. I just want to interrupt here real quick to say hello to Dave Lusader, Herbie Lone Eagle, Nick Yamashita, and Keith Burkholter. Thank you for watching. They're all live right now with us. And so I'm going to take the opportunity to bring up one of our sponsors, MrManStuff.com. Take a whiff of this, Doc Vern. Tell me what you think.
Well, it has a very pleasant odor.
Smells like a pine forest. Actually, this is our Mr. Man. It is all natural quality products. They have some with charcoal scrubs in them, different varieties. You can go to their website, MrManStuff.com, and they have a Mr. Man Stuff for women. It comes in a floral or a berry fragrance. But tell you from personal experience, my hubby's favorite. He uses this stuff all the time. It doesn't leave the nasty film on you. It lasts a good long time. Some of them even have some salt scrub in them or some exfoliant, but absolute favorite of my hubby's. I love the smell. They're all really good, natural, fresh, smell like the great outdoors. So MrManStuff.com, and thanks to all of our viewers who are watching. This is so exciting. So, okay, I'm sorry. Let's get back to the calcium and absorption. So people will try different types. I know they've got a bunch of different types of calcium out there, and one of them is coral calcium, which they kind of push as an alternative to some of those supplements that aren't dissolvable. So what's the deal on coral calcium there, Doc?
Well, like I say, this is one of my favorite subjects, and as I get into it, keep this in mind because it's why I started now. I live in a complex in Beaver Dam, Arizona. And so last fall, I had so many requests to answer questions from individuals about supplementation. And I decided that I would set up a program to have a class every 2 weeks and cover some of these subjects about supplementation. Now, I want to tell everyone and get it clear that I am not selling anything. All I'm doing is sharing information. Now, if that's worth anything, fine. That's up to you.
And that's true. He doesn't even have products or anything that he pushes specifically.
I have access, and the supplements that I use, I have used most of them for years and years. I know that they work. I know how that they work. I know where they come from. And I research several sources. I don't go to just one source to see what the studies are. If you go to a firm that is selling probiotics, you don't want to just rely on what their research shows you. Because I won't beat around the bush. People lie.
No.
They lie, really.
They do?
Believe it or not, they do.
Wow.
And it's because of greed, and they don't really much care about the consequences of the lie that they tell you, as long as their bottom line and their trip to the bank is successful. So pardon me if I'm stomping on anybody's toes. I hope I am stomping on your toes. If the shoe fits, wear it. If it doesn't, then throw the shoe out and get the right size. But I don't want to get philosophical here. But with the calcium situation, that's what triggered me to do these classes. Because a year ago in August, the FDA released a statement. I read it in the Sampler newspaper. I think it comes out of St. George. But this release from the FDA advised particularly women that were taking a calcium supplement to stop taking the supplemental calcium, because by taking the supplemental calcium, they were increasing their risk of stroke and heart attack by 40%. Well, this, folks, is true. Now, I just got through saying that calcium is a very important thing, one of the most important chemicals in your body. Now I tell you, well, if you take the calcium, it's going to increase your incidence of stroke and heart attack by 40%. Well, if you take it on the basis of what most of the healthcare community is telling you, then that statement is absolutely true. But what the community, our healthcare system is not telling you is the correct way for calcium utilization. Do I need to repeat that? Are you hearing me? It's calcium utilization. And there is a formula for calcium utilization, and if it is not followed, yes, you are putting yourself at risk. The first item is, what kind of calcium are you taking? I would dare guess that probably 90% of the calcium being taken in this country now is calcium carbonate. Now you can look this up, you can do your own research. I'm not just bringing these figures out. This is 61 years of research I've been doing this kind of stuff. And even if you're kind of stupid or on the dumb side, you learn a few things in 61 years, whether you want to or not. But back to the subject of the calcium, you need to take a calcium that your body first can utilize. And very little amounts of calcium carbonate are absorbed in the body under the best circumstances. Now, these are not my researches. I didn't do them. It's what I've studied over the years. Your easiest calcium to be absorbed is calcium lactate. Now, not calcium lactose. That's milk source. Calcium lactate is from plant source. So keep that in mind.
What type of plants are more dense in calcium lactate?
Well, I can't name it right off the top of my head, but it's.
We'll look into that a little bit more to find out.
This is what I'm doing. If I don't do anything else, I'm twinking your curiosity to look. But there are charts that tell you, and there's no way. You know, I'm pushing 88 years old now, and my file cabinet's got a lot of dust and a little corrosion there. So I just can't spend the kind of energy it takes anymore.
That instant recall isn't exactly instant
there.
anymore, huh?
There's too many files to go through and too much dust on them. But anyway, there's charts that tell you that.
Okay, so back to the calcium lactate.
So calcium lactate is the easiest one. Now, there's controversy on, well, is it the best one? Well, your next best is bone meal calcium, because that comes from animals, and we're not just talking about just calcium. When I say calcium, that doesn't in and of itself build bone or do the cell stuff. Any of these supplements or vitamins, you never find them singly alone in nature. They're always combined with something else. So when it comes to bone meal calcium, then you've got phosphorus in there. You've got all the minerals, what they call the trace minerals. I had to look up a little notepad, the trace minerals. There are dozens of things that go into this, but I'm just covering the major ingredients of the calcium. And so bone meal calcium is really good. And it, of course, comes from animal sources, but you have to be careful if you're going to take bone meal calcium that it comes from farms that do not put a lot of antibiotics and growth hormones in the feed to the animals, because you get it passed on down to you.
Just look at any 11-year-old nowadays developing.
Be careful of what your calcium source is, where it comes from. Okay, now getting back to the calcium utilization. Now there's oyster shell calcium, there's coral calcium, all these things come along that you got to have these. Well, I have lived my whole life functioning quite well on common sense and logic. And calcium, coral calcium, sits there in salt water, sometimes for centuries, and it's still there. Well, I don't think that that's going to be dissolved in your stomach within 4 hours. That brings me to my next subject. Any calcium that you take must be dissolved in your stomach by primarily hydrochloric acid. It has to be dissolved in the first 7 feet of the intestinal tract and absorbed in that period of time. If it is not absorbed in that level, I'll even give you the benefit of the doubt and say the first 10 feet. But if it is not dissolved within that first 10 feet of the intestinal tract, it will not be absorbed any time after that.
I have to interrupt for a second then. What is the Why do they sell Tums then with calcium?
Well, that's the biggest fallacy. I hope I don't get sent the hit squad from Tums.
Sorry, Tums, but yeah.
But that's one of the most ridiculous things that there is, because they sell Tums to give you calcium. Well, it's calcium carbonate. Well, the Tums are also an acid which neutralizes the acid that you're probably deficient in your stomach anyway if you're over 40 years old. And so that neutralizes
any of the acid
the
that
acid
would
that
dissolve
it takes to dissolve the calcium. So does that make any sense?
No.
You know, I hope I tweak your curiosity. Look it up and make some common sense out of yourself.
So what is the proper way to take it? I know it involves taking not just the calcium, but additional supplements along with it.
Yes, a good digestive enzyme. So much of the acid stomach that people talk about is not really an acid stomach at all. And here again, you're going to think that I'm stomping on your toes because you have been told all these years that you have an acid stomach. Well, research after research or research will tell you and show you that the older you get, the less hydrochloric acid is produced in your stomach. So if you need to take a supplement and you're going to take it, then a good digestive enzyme along with the calcium should be taken. Now we get into another phase of the supplementation. Vitamin D is essential to be taken with the calcium, because the vitamin D is one of the things that is primarily important in getting the calcium through the intestinal wall into your bloodstream. Now, if you want to make yourself a chart, go ahead, and I'll talk slow enough that I'm impressing on you. You have to have hydrochloric acid, you have to have vitamin D, you have to have a usable calcium. Now that gets the calcium out of your intestinal tract into your bloodstream. Until it gets out of your intestinal tract, the calcium is not in your body. Now think about that for a while. The tube, your intestinal tract, goes from your mouth to wherever, and it's a tube, and it's enclosed in your body, but it is not in your body. So we're getting the calcium now dissolved properly with vitamin D. It's into your bloodstream. Okay, this is the critical point. If that calcium stays in your bloodstream, it's going to thicken your bloodstream, and it is going to make you subject to stroke and heart attack.
And blood clots, even?
No. Well, I don't think there's a correlation with blood clots. Okay. That's a whole different thing, but it thickens the blood up. So you have to have something else that gets the calcium out of your bloodstream, out into the body tissues where your body can utilize it. And that is then, it goes to the nervous system, it goes to your bones, it goes to your teeth. You can use the calcium that you take. And one of the most essential, now, as I mentioned, there aren't any of these chemical processes that it's just one or two things. There's a whole gamut of things, but one of the most important that you have to concentrate on to get it out of the intestinal, out of the bloodstream, into the body tissues, you must have your omega-3 fatty acids. The omega-3s. Now there's all kinds of omegas, fatty acids. There's 6 and 7s, and I'm not even going to go there, other than to tell you the ratio between omega-3 and omega-6 is so totally out of control that it's a wonder we even have a society left now. The ratio should be 3 to 5, 3 omegas to 5 6s, and it's 3 to in the 25 above and into the 30s. It's totally out of balance. And the thing that's kicking it mostly out of balance is our cooking oils. But we'll discuss that a little bit later. There are certain cooking oils that you use, and there are certain ones that don't, because they're literally killing you. I don't know if we have time to get into that a whole lot at this point or not, but anyway, you have to remember it's the omega-3s, and those are common to all of us. It's your fish oils, it's olive oil, it's coconut oil, avocados, and this triggers another one of my frustrations. I've been waiting for over 50 years now for the apologies from all of these people that called me a damn quack and a charlatan and all of these names when I was telling them about vitamins and minerals and oils and their diet and the pyramid that they had up until just the last several years. That pyramid, diet pyramid, was upside down. All these things that they told you for years and years and years were bad for you, or the things that you should have been eating. And you're not that far away in memory-wise that you can't remember how much they were pushing margarine. Oh, don't eat butter, it'll kill you. Yeah, the hell, it's margarine that was going to kill you. And I'll give you another little shocker if you want. Margarine was developed during the Second World War, World War II.
For what?
And it was developed out of corn oil. They hydrogenated it. It was designed as axle grease.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and I know some of you, and you'll say, well, I've been drinking too much of my bath water. Well, maybe I have, but it's still the truth. It was designed for axle grease, and then some capitalistic, Americanized person decided, hey, this is close enough to have the molecular structure that can be food source, so let's market it. And some of you remember it, but anybody that's my age or up to 30 years younger than me will remember that when margarine was first put out, it came in a white block. It could not be colored. They sent you a little cellophane package in it that had yellow food coloring in it, and you broke the packet, spread it around, and then mixed up the margarine with a fork to turn it yellow and make it appear to be butter. Well, I'll take butter on my sandwich any day of the week than I will axle grease.
No kidding. And you know, back in the days when I was a child, and I know my mother consistently as a child, her their parents and grandparents would give them a teaspoon of castor oil every day or cod liver oil. And that was what kept them healthy. I mean, that was their daily regimen, to give that oil. And you had all of these people out there who were certainly a lot tougher and stronger than the young folks or the people that we have in society today, right?
Yeah, that brings up one of my favorite things too, is cod liver oil. They used to have it in a bottle and a teaspoonful of it. Well, the thing about the cod liver oil is that it contains all of the vitamin D that you need, and it also contains your omega-3 fatty acids. But here again, now don't all run out now and start buying up cod liver oil, because if it's cod liver oil and it isn't processed properly, then it's of no value to you. Most of it, they put the fish up here in the rack and grind them up and run them through steam and get all the oil out of them. Well, that kills the vitamin D to start off with, and it virtually destroys the properties of the omega-3.
So if you're looking for any type of cod liver oil, check for something that's been cold pressed.
Cold pressed and processed properly. To really get good cod liver oil, it used to take almost a year to do it. And so these factories that produce it, they get you cod liver oil within 24 hours.
Well, the ancient Greeks now, they are big on the olive oil. The Mediterranean diet is full of olive oil, and even a lot of the old, Greek, traditional people who still live on the islands, they do a shot of the olive oil every day.
Yes. So we need to wake up a little bit on what we're doing. So getting back to the calcium, it's not the calcium itself that's a culprit, it's the calcium utilization. And so you can dig into this as deep as you want, but how many people do you know now that think that they're getting all of the calcium that they need, but yet they have osteoporosis? And how is osteoporosis being treated? There isn't really much of a gain in the treatment of osteoporosis. There's some, but they get into the drugs, and don't get me wrong, folks, I'm not anti-drug. I'm not anti-anything. I'm just trying to wake you up a little bit, get your curiosity, because the way our healthcare system is being run now, it's literally killing us. Our diets, we can't produce the foods anymore with the nutritional value that it had 50 years ago. Our soil is being depleted. And then we have to get some kind of supplementation. I mentioned earlier that in certain areas, some of the important substances in the soil that we need to make our bodies function properly is not even in the soil to begin with. And the prime example of that is iodine. The whole Intermountain area of the United States is deficient in iodine. It was wiped out during the Ice Age. How many years ago? Millions? I'm not even going to go there. It was a few minutes before I was born.
A few years before you were born, yeah.
But anyway, that depleted the iodine. And so particularly Utah had the highest incidence of goiter in any place in the world. and particularly the United States. That's one I think we're primarily concerned about right now. But goiter was very prominent. I remember people, and you may have seen it and not know what it was. It was a great big thing on the side of their neck, usually. It's about the size of a baseball.
Priest who
That was
baptized me had
the
one.
first one I ever saw was the side of a baseball. Well, that was a goiter. Well, the goiter was caused because lack of iodine. Now, why iodine? Well, the goiter was caused from the thyroid glands. And iodine is very, very essential for the function of the thyroid. And I don't have time to go into all the functions of the thyroid. That's some of the things that I cover in the classes that I give in our compound.
It does kind of regulate metabolism to a certain degree, doesn't it?
Yes, it's metabolism. It has many things. One thing that is very essential is it in brain development. And I'll just kick this in because it's something I ran across in research. Take it for what it's worth. But a baby in the fetus, their brain development develops in the first 2 months of their development. And it takes the function of the thyroid coming from the mother's blood to develop the brain. So if the mother goes in that pregnancy with a thyroid deficiency, then in all probability, the baby will have or could develop a mental deficiency themselves because the brain is not developed properly. But who tells you all of this kind of stuff? And I didn't dream it up. The research is there. So these things you think don't make any difference, well, they do. And it can be learned long term. So that you need to do a little bit of study and use a little common sense in the things that we do. And all we do, we look on the television and something comes on there and say, oh, we'll take this because you might have this, and see your doctor about that. Well, I don't know when the television station got a license to prescribe and develop your health program.
They've actually become the drug pushers of society today.
Yes, and then if you look, here's this thing that's supposed to cure a condition, but then look at the side effects. Now, they're not side effects at all. They are effects. There's nothing side about them. They are effects. And if you take the time, just stop your television on pause and then get up close to it and read all the small print. I'll bet there isn't one out of 100 of you that may be watching this cast that has ever done that. If they advertise an insurance policy on there, just click your pause button on there and then go up and read all that fine print down in there. You wouldn't buy that insurance. You wouldn't pay a premium if they practically gave it to you.
They couldn't probably pay you to take it.
So anyway, we're getting off the subject.
Leads us into a little bit of a transitional here, but I do want to take a moment to highlight one of our other sponsors, Karen Wilson Fielding. If you're out there looking for a house in Mesquite, she is one of the top realtors, ERA Brokers Consolidated. You'll find all her information on our website. That's Karen Wilson Fielding. And go see her for a house. She's really got a couple of really nice, beautiful homes on her listing right now. And we do thank Karen very much for being one of our advertisers and supporting the Virgin River Times and our show. So, Doc, these PRC tests now, talking about some of the information that you just don't get from the medical profession, or sometimes you need to turn off the TV because all they want to push is the sellable aspects of any medication or whatnot. But Pfizer scientists, actually, they discovered a letter written from the Pfizer scientists specifically to the FDA on these PRC tests, that what's generally detectable are lower and upper respiratory specimens, you know, the mucus from the upper and lower respiratory tract during the infection, so they can, you know, swab that. But the positive results are indicative of a COVID infection, but do not rule out bacterial infections. So the PRC test, they're stating, not only picks up corona, which, by the way, they have not ever been able to actually secure or grab that one specific corona 19. The PRCs are for any coronavirus, which is the common cold, but it picks up bacterial infections too. What were those masks? What does wearing a mask for 8 hours a day, what is that doing to our kids right now?
You know, I think it's a problem, and that's an opinion, and it's like belly buttons. Everyone has one, but anymore we're not allowed. We're not allowed to have an opinion. But test after test will show that when they do this PRC test, the level that they take it to is incorrect, and they know that.
With the 40, the cycles that they're running them through?
Yes, when they run them through, the more cycles that they run them through, the more apt they are to come up with a false positive. And they're up into, I think it's something like 35 or something like that, and they should stop at about 25 to get any accuracy out of those tests. So the scientific community, I don't know who the scientific community is and how they're determined, because I know many people that have equally qualifying credentials and educational background that are certainly disagreeing with them. But those people you're not hearing from.
But this is from the Pfizer company themselves, that those PRC tests do not rule out a bacterial infection or co-infection of another virus. So it could pick up influenza.
Yes.
And give you a positive result, which we did not see any cases of influenza pretty much in 2020. They were picking up all the COVID, you know, as COVID positive. But you do notice on the CDC website at one point, we started getting a reduction of the deaths to COVID-19 and started getting an increase in deaths due to pneumonia. And that happened right around June and July. You'll see that shift, and it's today happening. If you look at the provisional death counts on the CDC website, we actually have more cases of pneumonia than we do of COVID. So on this testing, they've never been really very accurate with it, is what they're saying. And the Pfizer has specifically come out with reports saying that the natural immunity now is 27 times stronger in an individual than the vaccine. Do you believe that?
I believe that, and that's a question. The United States must be doing that kind of research and that testing, but they are not releasing it to the public, and I want to know why. Now, they use Israel as their staff poll here. Anything that Israel does is okay, and they publicize it. Okay, Israel did the research, and they came up with the figure that the natural immunity is 20 times better. England also did the same study, and they came up with 18 to 25. And so why are we not being given this information? If they're doing the study, why don't they release it? And if they're not doing that study, why are they not doing the study? Because come on, folks, now I'm not anti or pro vaccine. This is not the argument here. What I am talking about is why are we being lied to, and why are we having information, pertinent information, not released to us?
There's a lot of information that they're coming forth with on the VAERS system, that the reporting, the FDA even stated that the reporting from the VAERS system is inaccurate. And the FDA is also supposed to be reporting their own system of adverse reactions, and theirs isn't accurate. They found over 45,000 deaths. Medicare. Okay, so you have a lot of different agencies, the VAERS system, the FDA, and Medicare, that are doing their own studies on the adverse reactions. Nobody's putting them all together at this point, but just in the Medicaid system alone, 45,000, or Medicare system alone, 45,000 deaths were attributed to vaccine, the COVID vaccine. So that's information that it's there, but it's buried. It's not forthcoming on any of the news networks or anything like that. That certainly adds to the 12,000 deaths that have been reported on the VAERS system. And the FDA states that the 2 out of the 3 systems have had inaccurate data. They cannot be sure that every adverse reaction is being reported. There is some specification in the medical community that they don't consider a person to be fully vaccinated until 14 days post vaccine number 2. Well, if you die within 3 days of that vaccine, you're not considered to be a fully vaccinated individual. Therefore, that death is not being reported to the VAERS system.
Yes.
So again, we have a lot less data available to us. I don't know if any of you, I'm allergic to the vaccine, so I'm not able to take it, but there's supposed to be a disclosure, because this is an experimental type of process. This is not, this is a human trial until 2023.
Yes.
You are part of the experiment right now, and in becoming part of that experiment, there has to be total disclosure. And I don't see at this point, it's only been a year, or a little over a year that COVID has even been heard about. How, let alone the vaccine has not been out for a full year. How could there possibly be total disclosure without the years of data to back up any adverse reactions to this vaccine? And now they're wanting to mandate it on children without all of this data being brought forth.
We have reason, and we certainly have the right to question what's going on now. And I don't know where the statement came from, but I heard it first from my father probably 70 years ago. And he said, "Figures don't lie, but liars figure."
That's a pretty accurate statement.
So take that for what it's worth, folks.
So we're just going to take a couple minutes over here, and I'm sorry, we are a couple minutes over, but you did have COVID. You and your wife both.
Yes, we had COVID, and the symptoms were very mild. We had about 5 days that it was about like the flu. But I didn't go because I knew I didn't have to, but my wife and our daughter went to the clinic and they tested positive for COVID. Okay, so we went through the normal quarantine thing. We did this all volunteer. We stayed in the house. We didn't go anywhere. But while they were there at the clinic, they asked the clinic, is this the D variant? They said, we don't know because we don't have a test for it. Well, then how do they know how many variant cases there are if they don't have a test for it?
But right now they list at least 10 different variants that they've recognized and supposedly isolated, but there's no way to isolate.
Yeah. So
the
who's
actual virus.
lying to who? I mean, folks, we got to wake up a little bit here. We got to. We just got to wake up. We don't know what's going on around us.
And we want to make absolute sure that we are not trying to tell you not to get the vaccine or to get the vaccine. That's a personal medical choice between you, your healthcare professional, whoever that is. What we're asking people to do is to do some extensive research. Turn off the television set and stop listening to the narrative that's being pushed, because there is an awful lot of information out there. They keep putting off as conspiracy theory, but these documents exist, and they exist between these companies who know what they're doing. And in all cases, follow the money, folks. Follow the money. These vaccine companies are making a killing and are going to continue to make a killing off of these mandates. And how long is it going to be before we become addicted or dependent on this vaccine? Do some research into what that GP120 spike protein does to you and what it's going to do to your immune system. The studies have been out there. They're hiding them. They're keeping them, from being, completely public knowledge. But I assure you, the studies are there, and the information is available. So please, before you make any drastic decisions you cannot take back, do your research, right?
Absolutely.
Once it's in, can't come out. So be really, really sure that is what you need to do. And you're not responsible for anybody else's health but your own. Right? Am I responsible for your health, Doc?
Only if you pick up a brick and hit me in the head.
All right.
I hope I don't do anything to trigger that kind of reaction.
I love this man too much. There's absolutely no way I would ever do that. So we do want to thank you for hanging with us for the extra few minutes here. We appreciate you being with us today, and hopefully we look forward to having Dr. Vern back in the near future. Thank you again to our sponsors, Karen Wilson Building and Mr. Mann. And we'll see you on Friday, folks. Oh, later this afternoon, in a little bit here, I guess about 1:30, I'm going to be going live. We're going to go over to the art gallery. I'm going to do some live broadcasts from there, show you what their silent auction items are, get you guys to come on down there and join in the fun, and then tell you about their witches ball. And then I think we might make a little trip down to a pretty special little gift shop here in town that you might not all know about. So stay tuned. In about an hour and a half, we'll be live again. Thanks for watching. We'll see you later.
Take care and be well.
Always.